our ability to analyse data and understanding what the actual tangible value of a property is versus what you would pay emotionally, I think are worlds different. Most beginner investors don't even know what their objectives are.
Are we ready to go, Peach? So we're back here on Property Now. I'm Michael Carboni. You can call me Carbs. You know that by now. And if you're a regular listener, you'll be familiar with Alex Minter, Astute Property Network, the buyer's agent, the crystal ball, I call you, for a couple of reasons, for anyone that's watching. But good to have you back, one of our most popular guests, so we keep having you back all the time. This episode's a little bit different. You'll notice it's just the two of us. It's one-on-one, it's Q&A. It's one of my favourite episode styles because I'll just read questions. I don't have to do any work. I don't have to think about anything. All the thinking, all the gold is coming from this man right here. Good to have you back, man.
Thanks for having me.
Today we're talking about, so you're a buyer's agent, obviously.
Allegedly, yeah.
Allegedly. That's what it says on your driver's license. Does it? I don't know. I want to dive deep into what is a buyer's agent, what's the point of a buyer's agent, et cetera, et cetera. So it's proper Q&A. As we normally do with these episodes, we've gone through Reddit. We found some very popular Reddit questions related to the topic. We've gone to our audience, YouTube, TikTok, Composite Street, etc., etc. We're going to ask you what the people want to know about buyer's agents in general. And we're going to kick off very quickly. This question is not actually here on my list. What's a buyer's agent for anyone that's first or new to the show?
A buyer's agent, in a nutshell, is a licensed agent who represents the buyer in a transaction.
Which I think is very important because the seller has lots of agents that can represent them. If you're selling, mate, easy.
It's a very infant but very fast growing industry in this country, and I think many, Aussies, let's call it, you go back and ask your mum and dad, would they have paid somebody to find them a property at the time?
They would have said no way.
Yeah, I would have, they would have sworn. So, but it's a rapidly evolving space.
So what actual value does a buyer's agent bring?
Good question. So a buyer's agent isn't for everybody, and we shouldn't be suggesting that everybody needs to use one either. It just comes down to, the individual's circumstances at the time. We'll probably delve further into the conversation as we go, but there's different buyer's agents out there that provide different services. General rule of thumb, they give you back your time. They know how to analyse a market. They've got relationships. They've got access to opportunities that, many buyers may not have access to themselves. So there's many ways that they can add value, but again, it's just for the individual finding where that value is for them.
Because there are some fees involved, right? So I've seen fees 10, 15, 20K, a percentage of the sale. Yeah. Do you find yourself having to sell your worth? Or do people see that value when they approach you, or how do you go about that?
Most people who come to us understand that there is a fee for service. We've never had to justify that. Our process, we do go through, our value add is we'll do all the upfront numbers and strategy with you prior to any formal engagement or money down. So our clients or our buyers see that value up front, and if they want to engage us, they've got a clear understanding on what that engagement process is and what those fees entail.
So I guess for someone coming to you knowing that, that's fine. But I would suggest there's a bunch of people that the reason they don't see a buyer's agent is because, it's going to cost me 15 grand extra. They don't look into the under the hood, I suppose. So are there things like, hey, we're going to be able to find properties that you don't have access to? Are we going to be able to find an area of growth that's going to exceed what you'd be able to do on your own based on our research and our experience? What would be... Say we're not relying on people just coming walking through your door and calling you, which is great that your business is at a level where that can happen. But I'd say if that's 10% of the market, to the other 90% that are just no fucking way am I going to give you 15 grand to find me a house. What do you say to them?
That's fine.
Okay.
Again, at the end of the day, if the individual, the party, that the buyers have an objective and they can't fulfill that objective themselves, then they see value in what we do.
Yep.
Right. It's like anything. Now, for an intermediate or beginner investor, most of the time they either look in their own backyard. Most of the time they'll follow social media and the commentary of, people that are prominent in that space.
Yep.
And then, try and go and find opportunities in those markets that they talk about. But is it relevant to them? Is it going to meet their objectives? And most beginner investors don't even know what their objectives are.
Yep.
Right. So there's professionals out there that can help identify what those objectives look like from a numbers point of view, and then identify opportunities that meet those objectives.
Yep.
Right. So if nobody sees value in that, then a buyer's agent probably isn't
Right for them. Yeah.
Right. Which is completely okay.
Yeah. I love that attitude. Do you think there's specific scenarios where an agent might be more beneficial? So, for example, if you're not sure what your goals are, or if you're an owner occupier or an investor, or if it's an interstate purchase potentially, and you're not able, say, I've got a friend at the moment who's based in Sydney, looking to buy in Adelaide. He can't exactly fly back and forth to Adelaide all the time, so he needs help. Are there situations where there's a specific scenario where a buyer's agent is very helpful?
Certainly, yeah. There's what you would know as a borderless buyer's agent. So, they're not limited to one particular suburb or region or state. They have relationships and staff and people in different states who are able to facilitate those types of purchases. And again, for many investors, I always encourage having a business mind or a numbers mind going into the purchase, because again, if there's markets and opportunities out there that they're unfamiliar with or even know about, then those types of buyers agents can certainly help them with those purchases.
Do you think so? Let me ask you, how do you become a buyer's agent?
Good. How deep you want to go?
Let's go deep. I always say, I feel like I say this to you every episode. The deeper the better.
Deep. Oh, look. When I left school, I did my work experience at school in real estate, and I had a interest in cars and real estate, being a young lad. And when I did leave school, I did choose the automotive route. I was an automotive refinishing technician.
Okay.
If you don't know what that is, it sounds pretty.
It sounds very technical.
It does, yeah. I fix cars.
Yeah.
Look, I was in that space for a number of years, and then again, I always had this feeling of like, I wanted to buy property, and I entered the market when lenders were doing 100% lend back then, which was around 2004, 2005. And bought my first house and in Western Sydney. And look, realised pretty quickly after that my life was changing, and this wasn't the industry I wanted to be in. And I quit my job without anywhere to go.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I've got a mortgage to pay. I've got stuff.
Bit silly, mate. Like, I don't know.
Typical.
Would you?
Yeah.
Would you? Yeah. Anyway, obviously it's worked out okay.
Yeah, but when you put yourself in a position of you got to sink or swim, you normally.
I've heard so many successful people say that.
Yeah.
Like you need when you're under so much pressure, that's when the diamonds are really created.
Make it happen, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was given an opportunity through a friend of mine to go and try. It was a real estate company, but it wasn't your general real estate. It was, a property investment firm. And, I cut my teeth in that direct sales, selling memberships to families who would then be sold investment properties. Right, and those types of companies are still out there.
It sounds a bit spooky, if you don't mind me saying.
It was,
yeah.
And I was very inexperienced at the time, right?
Yep.
However, I got exceptional training, and I cut my teeth in that space.
Yep.
And from there, I was then working for financial planning organisations who had property divisions. So I was working in the property division. I then took an opportunity to go and work in Queensland directly for a developer at the time. So saw that side of
So again, in
of real estate.
sales?
Yeah, it
Yep.
was all sales, and then a lot of off the plan experience, and I guess over time, you sort of start to understand value, what's good, what isn't, and doing what I was doing, there was a lot of, I guess, personal analysis on my behalf to, see what I was selling versus what the market was producing and what resales were, right? And then it got to a point where it started to become very clear, well, there's more value in this space, buying established. And look, from there, I kind of just merged the company. I started working for myself and then grew the company to a point where, we're buyers agents and, representing buyers.
It's a long journey.
It is,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Overnight
interesting.
success, which took 15 years.
That's what everyone says. Yeah, I always the common ones are always when I speak to buyers agents, it's either they were real estate agents and then they ended up really liking helping the buyer get in as well, or they saw an opportunity because, like you said, it's at its infant stages. There's not as many buyers agents as there are real estate agents, so maybe that's an opportunity for them. And then the other side is the property bros that have bought 70 properties in 5 minutes. They've retired, but they're really bored. So they're like, oh, hey, I'm going to help other people do what I'm doing, which is interesting. You would have come across a lot of real estate agents in your time, obviously, that you deal with. Does the relationship between buyers and sellers agents impact the process or the negotiation process, do you think?
I certainly think it does to a degree. Now, in saying that, you get to know who's who in the zoo and the areas that you are buying, right? Because when you identify an area, then you want to, uncover opportunities. So you're speaking to numerous agents, and you may buy multiple properties through one agent. So, that relationship does start to strengthen.
Yep.
And I guess it gets to a point now where, Carbs, if you're an agent and I'm the buyer's agent, you know what I'm there to do. You know what I'm there to buy. I know what you're there to do. So I think the negotiation process is a lot quicker. I think, there's a bit more transparency around what do you need as a seller and versus what I need as a buyer. And if there's that mutual agreement, then you can make something happen pretty quickly. Right. But, with agents who, I make calls to agents daily and, there's many of them I don't think like talking to buyers agents these days because, again, it was a thing that wasn't really around 10 years ago, but now agents get called, multiple times by buyers agents, like, oh, another buyers agent, right? So you got agents who like working with them and you got agents who don't prefer working with them, right? So that can be a challenge.
Yep. Interesting. And do you think you're in a better position to negotiate with this experience and this knowledge versus, say, Joe Blow, myself off the street negotiating? You're saying, like, one of the things was it's faster negotiation.
Yep.
Are you in a better position?
I think our ability to analyse data and understanding what the actual tangible value of a property is versus what you would pay emotionally, I think a world's different.
Is it as dramatic as Lux listings where they're like, come on, mate, I'm here, what I'm here for?
Suit on.
Yeah.
I'll turn up in my Lamborghini, not. Look, I think that's very Hollywood, very staged. There's probably buyers agents who operate in that space who act like that, but that's not my jam.
Not when the cameras are switched off, probably. Well, one of the things that I think would be an advantage is because you're getting to know all the agents, when things are about to come up. So one term that I hear a lot when people are speaking to a buyer's agent, or one thing that buyer's agents promote a lot, is this thing called off-market properties. So there seems to be like this access to off-market because you know all the agents, you know what's coming. Maybe an agent will call you knowing that you've got a lot of buyers in the area saying, hey, I've got this 4-bedroom terrace, coming up. Have you got anyone that's interested? It makes the agent's job easier if they don't need to advertise it, right?
1,000%. Yeah.
Is this overblown, this whole off-market thing? Because every now and then I'll see a sign, sold off-market. Yeah. I'll see it every now and then, but it doesn't seem to be as crazy as the hype that I hear from buyers agents. Is it real?
Well, just because a property is off market doesn't mean it's a good purchase.
Yep.
Right. And just because an agent may come to you as just a buyer and not through a buyer's agent, like you as a buyer, it says, hey, I've got an off market opportunity, doesn't mean it's, great, right? Because you still got to know how to negotiate. You still got to know how to analyze. You've still got to go through all that DD that you would if it was on market,
Yep.
right? Now, and again, going back to your question around the relationships that buyers agents build with agents, I certainly think that helps in regards to getting access to off market, because I think they see us as a long-term play. They understand we've got qualified buyers all the time, right? We're not there to kick tires. We know we're serious offers. And, if an agent wants the path to least resistance, let's call it, doesn't really care about a marketing campaign, or maybe just the circumstances of the vendor, right? It's not necessarily all driven by the agent. But they reach out to buyers agents and let us know about pre-market campaigns, or let us know that this is off market.
So let's unpack some of the reasons why a property would be off market. Because to me, like you said, if it's off market, doesn't mean it's the right property to buy, right? So why would speed? They don't want to spend dollars advertising.
There's numerous.
What are some of the personal situations that might lead to an off market sale or need for an off market sale?
Divorce. Divorces. It could just be private. They don't want the neighbours walking through the house. They don't want the neighbours to know that they've sold. They don't want to upset tenants, right? So there's numerous and multiple reasons. And I think in any case, whether it's on market or off market, I think, as a negotiator, as somebody buying a property, you've got to really understand, why are these vendors selling, right? Whether on market or off, why are they selling this property?
Yep. So is a divorced couple likely to want to could you get a better deal typically because they want to get the deal done quickly and not have any headaches?
Look,
for example?
From our experience, we haven't hit any hurdles where, one party is not playing ball. From our experience buying divorce sales, it's quick. It's like, just get it done. Fair market value is normally fine, and it's a good purchase.
Might be a strategy. I don't know. Anyway, if you really want to dig deep, one term I see a lot is deceased estate, and that's not always off market, but it's maybe I feel like it's such a marketing term. Like, people see deceased estate and it's like, I'm going to be able to get this cheap because the family needs to sell it fast.
I was about to ask, what do you think when you hear deceased
I think
estate?
opportunity to get a bargain.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's what I think. So, and it's probably not the case, right? But it's just the marketing spin and term that they use, right? Because why else would you say it?
Well, I think, again, it all comes down to the marketing of the agent. They could say deceased estate because it's positioning you for, hey, you're going to walk into this property and it's going to be old because there was an older person in there.
Gotcha.
Right?
So it needs renos. That's another thing that it might.
Exactly
it's a fixer-upper.
It's a fixer-upper.
Yeah.
It could be, hey, there's a deal to be done here, quick sale, bring your best offer. It's all circumstantial.
From your buyer's perspective, and I know you deal with mainly investors and stuff, right? So, but if I'm trying to sell and I'm speaking to buyer's agents and someone like yourself, are you finding that people at the moment, because we've seen a whole bunch of things like supply costs have gone up, so renovations are more expensive, for example. So if you're speaking to a buyer about their strategy, would you be looking at properties that need a bit of work, a lick of paint, or are you looking for properties that are complete, ready to move in, like no work required? Like, what are you looking at right now?
Again, it all depends on the individual circumstances. And when we set the parameters of the brief with a buyer, we go in depth to understand, what the appetite is for anything that does need renovation work as well. For many people, it's about, just buy and hold. They don't want to get their hands dirty. But again, depending what market you're in, there may be opportunity to make significant equity rather quickly by adding value to something, right? So, so again, it just depends on the circumstances of the buyer. We have no bias towards, buying something that's relatively new versus buying something that needs work, but you need to know the pros and cons.
It's really funny. We've got a project listed on Composite. It's land sales in Goulburn. Of all places, so near Canberra, ACT, right? And a lot of the sales that agent is getting is from tradies who live in Western Sydney, who are going to be able to do most of the build themselves, do a few things themselves, because there's value in, because supply costs have gone up, if they can actually do the work themselves. So if your buyer, I guess that's part of your brief, right? If I'm a cabinet maker and I can do my own kitchen,
Absolutely.
then hey, maybe don't be shy looking at
Yep.
a deceased estate or a fixer up or
But
something like that.
if you've got no, building experience or renovation experience, or that's not your trade, then you're paying full market cost for build or renovation, right? So then you got to look at the feasibility as well. If you're going to pay, full market cost for that renovation, what's the value going to be at the end? And
Are there people that look at that can help you, like say, hey, like this is, if you want to flip this, sorry, we're going way off topic.
Yeah.
If you want to flip it, like here are the areas that you should be fixing or investing in versus not, right?
Yeah, there's certainly data around, flipping versus buying and holding.
Can you give that sort of info? Like, hey,
Yep.
this is something that if you bought this and then you did X, Y, and Z.
Yep, we have access to that data. And look, we know the adding value to properties that we've bought over the years. They've normally been blocks that you can subdivide, add granny flats to. Nobody that we've worked with recently has gone in and ripped it apart straight away. So it is a bit of a land bank as well. Yeah.
Amazing. We talked earlier about fee structures, and I've seen one of the questions are pros and cons to different types of fee structures. So firstly, let us know what your fee structure is, but then so I've seen flat fees versus commission-based fees.
Yep.
What's the difference? What's the benefits? What do you do?
Yeah, so what we do, we operate on a flat fee structure, right? However, it's tiered. And that depends on, scope of works, depends on, price point and a few factors, right? We do need to sit with a buyer first to go through numbers to sort of understand what we are working with to then give a firm quote. And then, that's typically between, 11 and 25, 30,000, depending on what we're doing. And then there's companies that operate on percentage of purchase price as well. So again, it all depends on what the business model is. I mean, we've preferred the flat fee model just so there's no surprises. It's all up front. You know what the scope of works is. We know what the scope of works is. And then, if we're going into a negotiation purchase as well, I mean, if we're looking at two different opportunities, one is higher than the other. And, we're discussing with the buyer, hey, this is the one we should explore. It may be even in a negotiation scenario where we're like, hey, we've got to spend a couple more thousand. We don't want the buyer to feel like, that is being pushed up just for our benefit. Right. So, and I'm not saying that's what happens for buyers agents who do charge a percentage of the purchase price, because again, depending on what the agency does and depending on the scope of works of the buyer's agent, there's buyer's agents out there that work for owner occupiers, which is a lot. I think, from my experience in that space, is a lot more
emotional,
arduous. Yeah, it is. Whereas, an investment buyer's agent, I mean, yes, aesthetics are important and areas are important, but it is more data and numbers driven.
Yep. Is there, and I assume, some buyers will prefer your structure, some won't. Is there, if I'm ready to work with a buyer's agent, what do I need to bring with me to the initial consultation, or what do I need to have or let you know?
Yeah, I think, one, an open mind. Again, if you've probably got to work out what you think your objectives are, right? And a good buyer's agent will help you work out what they are. Now, if you go to a buyer's agent where it has to be this street, it has to be this suburb, or these are my strict parameters, there's no negotiation.
Do it yourself.
Well, you could, but I would suggest find a buyer's agent local in that area who can do that for you, right? If you're going into this as a beginner investor or intermediate investor, you may have got one or two and you're just looking to add to the portfolio. Go into it with an open mind as well, because just because the areas that you bought recently doesn't mean you're necessarily going to buy there again. Just because you live in a certain city or state doesn't necessarily mean it probably has to be there.
Yep. And so different buyers agents would be good at different things, right?
Absolutely.
Local versus interstate.
Absolutely, yeah.
Investor versus owner occupier, right? So I'm guessing you probably want to do some research around that.
Yeah.
What should I look for? And this is probably one of the final questions. What should I look for in a buyer's agent?
I think I encourage having a chat to a few, right? So have a chat to a handful, and at the end of the day, work with who you feel comfortable with, work with who you feel is aligned with your values, strategy as well, because they're all going to be different. Ask some questions. Ask some. To send the agreement. What does your agreement look like? What's the time frame that I'm contracted to use you guys? Show me some examples that you purchased recently that are in line with what I'm doing.
Time frame contracted. I didn't know about that.
Yeah,
Tell me about this.
Well, there's what we do, and I know many buyers agents do it. I guess what you want to do with a buyer is you want to agree on a certain amount of time that you have to work with them, right? Those timeframes can be a couple months to 6 months, right? So it just depends again on what the scope of works for the buyer as well, because some strategies may take a week, some strategies may take longer.
But I guess you want to know if you're putting in the effort, the data, the research,
Yeah.
the time, that they're not like sleeping with other buyers agents.
Use who you want to use, but
Yeah.
I think good purchasers, there's not an abundance of them that you can just purchase daily.
Yeah.
If it takes a week, it takes a week. If it takes a month, it takes a month. If it takes 2 months, it takes 2 months.
I love it.
Right. So, us as a company, we don't just throw 10 properties across the table to buyers to say, hey, buy these because this is all we've got access to.
So how many options would you normally give?
So normally 2 to 3. And so they don't have to buy those 2 to 3.
Yeah.
But for the detail that we go into, there's a lot of it, and there's a lot of resources that go into compiling the data for those specific properties.
I love it.
So and then the buyers do see why we are looking at those properties as well.
So I think some of the best advice: speak to a few.
Yeah.
Speak to a couple.
Yeah.
Date a few buyers agents. And then choose one.
Make your decision.
I think that's what I'm going to do when I'm ready. I'll definitely speak to you as one of them.
Yeah.
And I recommend that anyone that's listening or watching that is thinking about a buyer's agent will add your Astute Property Network details in our show notes. Alex, it's always great speaking to you, man. We are going to get you back for more. We're just going to keep getting you back because I think it's clear our viewers and our listeners love having you around and love what you have to say.
They
so
love
thanks.
The crystal ball.
They love the crystal ball. Thanks for coming on with me,
Thanks
man.
for having us.
Cheers.
The Property Now podcast offers opinions on Australian property news for informational and entertainment purposes only, and they are general in nature. It does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. It does not constitute professional advice. Always seek expert guidance before making any property-related decisions.